So we're coming up on the 5th year anniversary of the PlayStation 5. If you guys remember, it came out on November 12th of 2020, and it sort of seems like this generation has just passed us by, in my opinion. And even though it does feel a bit early to me, we're already starting to hear a bunch of new information about the potential PlayStation 6 that could be coming down the road. We even got an official video from PlayStation talking about the potential hardware that will be used in the upcoming PlayStation 6. Considering we're still waiting on some unreleased titles like Wolverine that was actually announced way back when the PlayStation 5 hadn't even come out yet, it's a little bit scary to think that we're already coming up on the next generation of video game consoles. But considering they have kind of historically had about 7-year runs, I guess it does make sense that we'd be kind of getting to that point. Not to mention game consoles have kind of become iterative rather than getting a big console release after a long period of time. But we got all that news and more on another episode of Game Corner. If you like what I do, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll stop wasting your time. So like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, we did get an official video from PlayStation going over the speculated hardware that will be used in the upcoming PlayStation 6. Just a few days ago, PlayStation posted on their YouTube channel a video titled "From Project Amethyst to the Future of Play, AMD and Sony Interactive Entertainment's Shared Vision." AMD's really got a lock on that video game console market, considering they're also working with Xbox. Basically, it's kind of a breakdown of some of the hardware and graphical features that'll be being used in the upcoming PlayStation 6, presented by the creator of Knack, Mark Cerny, and AMD's Jack Hune. If you guys remember, since about the PS4 era or so, Mark Cerny started doing these like technical breakdowns of the upcoming console before release. One of the more popular ones that came out was before the PS5 launched, and he kind of broke down all of the hardware in the PS5 at the time. Starting the video off, you can notice a very tall Tifa in the background. And, you know, hell yeah. That being said, there's a lot of technical jargon going on here. Even as a computer science major, some of this even goes over my head. Luckily for us, Abdullah Jawad over at The Gamer Post has a nice breakdown of the important components that they talked about during this video. First of all, we have neural arrays, which lets groups of GPU cores team up and share data so they can run bigger, better AI tools like upscalers and denoisers in real time. Obviously, with AI being kind of the big push for tech companies right now, I'm not surprised that they'd be leaning into this more. Also, with graphical resources kind of being very expensive on the hardware, it makes a lot of sense to utilize things like AMD's FSSR to kind of target those higher resolutions and frame rates without bogging down the system itself. Next up, we have radiance cores, which take over the heavy lifting for ray and path tracing, tracking millions of light rays, so the normal shader cores can focus on drawing the scene, which means cleaner reflections, shadows, and lighting without tanking performance. If you guys remember when the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X came out, ray tracing was kind of a big selling point of these consoles, and considering that it kind of was lackluster in its effectiveness, considering you either had to pick low frame rates with the ray tracing on, or getting those higher frame rates without the nicer looking picture, it would make a lot of sense for them to lean into creating hardware that would specifically target the use of ray tracing and global illumination. And lastly, universal compression, which squeezes all kinds of data, not just textures, before it goes to memory, effectively giving you more bandwidth to push higher detail and steadier frame rates with less waste. Once again, on current gen hardware, it's generally a choice between getting those higher resolutions and ray tracing or getting those high frame rates. And considering some of the most popular games in the world right now are things like Elden Ring, you obviously not only want a nice picture, but you also want the game to be able to run smoothly without getting hitched up during a boss fight or something like that. Abdullah also added a nice breakdown of the rumored specs for the PS6 for all you diehard techies out there from the YouTube leaker Moore's Law is Dead. As always, take everything we're saying on this show with a grain of salt, especially when we're talking about leaks and rumors. Considering we did get a real video from PlayStation AMD, obviously this is fairly concrete at this point, but the actual hardware inside of the system could still be up for grabs. Moore's Law is Dead has also had some missteps in the past as far as reporting on news goes, but he tends to do pretty good work and also iterates on that information over time. I really like the commitment they seem to have towards those higher target frame rates, considering it's such a pain to have to choose between the two of them. I've mentioned it a couple times now, but it really is the crux of this current generation of video game consoles. Having to choose one or the other just totally blows. Also, with that bigger emphasis on ray tracing and global illumination coming from those radiance cores that are supposed to be on the PS6, I think it kind of is just showing them that they have a dedication to trying to keep pushing that technology further. Ultimately, it could end up being one of those features that doesn't need to be like tacked on or enabled in the future, and it's just something that comes out of the box on most AAA games, right? Ultimately though, this begs the question, when are we actually going to see the PS6 release? Once again, personally, with how just strange this console generation is, it just feels so early to me. But Mark Cerny did mention at the end of that PlayStation video,
overall, it's of course still very early days for these technologies. They only exist in simulation right now, but the results are quite promising, and I'm really excited about bringing them to a future console in a few years' time.
Obviously, this quote clearly is hinting at the idea that we'd be seeing the PlayStation 6 in, give or take, the next 3 years. This information was also further corroborated by renowned internet leaker Kepler2 over on NeoGAF. After the user Nile mentioned that 2027 could still be on the table, Kepler2 responded by saying, "Not just on the table, it's the plan, unless any unexpected delays happen." I'm just a guy, obviously, so I don't know anything about what's going on behind the scenes at PlayStation. That being said, 2027 seems a little bit early to me. If anything, I think it'd be a late 2027 release and maybe even get pushed back to 2028. But once again, that's kind of just speculation on my end. Considering the current state of the economy and things like tariffs affecting American consumers from being able to buy entertainment products, as well as companies utilizing this tariff scare as a way to raise prices by insane amounts in the last year, I definitely think we are going to kind of have to see what this is going to look like as we come down the line towards that PlayStation 6 release. And that doesn't even begin to get into the pricing of what this PlayStation 6 is going to look like, especially if they plan to have all of this next-gen hardware going on inside of the console. Especially with hardware like the PS5 Pro already being priced at $750, and with the Xbox Series X trailing not far behind that at $650, it really begs the question, like, is this console going to be over $1,000? Once again, we're gonna kind of have to wait and see what this is all looking like 2 to 3 years down the road now. It is obviously possible that tariffs could go away by that point, or manufacturing of these parts could become cheaper, but as of right now, it's not looking great as far as pricing on this PlayStation 6. That obviously creates a much bigger conversation around the idea that these companies are potentially pricing their main audience out of even being able to enjoy the hobby at all. And you do wonder why they wouldn't kind of eat that cost a little bit to make sure that they can keep these people around for the long term, but that's just kind of the state of gaming we're in at the moment. As of right now, that's about all the PlayStation 6 news that I have for you guys today. Definitely some really interesting stuff going on in the industry right now, and I'm extremely curious to see where this goes in the future. While it's easy to sit here and kind of doom and gloom about the future of gaming, I do think it's important to remember that these companies put a lot of time, money, and effort into creating these wings of their companies just for gaming. Especially people like PlayStation don't have stuff like Windows to roll back onto. So PlayStation is a big part of making Sony money. But yeah, I'd love to hear what your guys' thoughts are down below. Definitely let me know what you're thinking about the hardware that's going into the PlayStation, what price you think it's going to be at, and kind of where your head's at as far as the future of gaming is. Anyway, I'm Brandon. Thanks for watching, and have a kick-ass week.